You're on top.
Did you want to be on top?
Hi, I'm Johnny. This is Johnny Likes, the show where I talk about movies that I like. Today I'm talking about a John Hughes movie. He wrote this one, didn't direct it. Today, Johnny likes career opportunities. So, kind of spoiler-y stuff here. The story's kind of obvious, but still spoilers. Frank Whaley plays Jim Dodge. He's a young guy, he's a compulsive liar, he lives at home, and he has no ambition, and his parents are sick of it. Jim is given an ultimatum by his parents. Either get a job or be shipped off to work at the garden shop with his uncle in St. Louis. He chooses to get a job. The job he ends up getting is the night janitor position at the local Target. His first night on the job, he comes across Josie McClellan, a local bombshell played by Jennifer Connelly. She fell asleep in the change room while contemplating shoplifting just in order to piss off her rich father. They bond, and later on in the night, they encounter a pair of thieves who were expecting an easy payday and were not expecting company. Everyone learns something, and some of them come of age by the end of the night. This is a John Hughes penned dramedy that he apparently disliked so much that he wanted his name taken off of it. He was not happy with the final product. I can see his motivation, but I also think that it is a little bit unwarranted. If you knew nothing about him or his previous films and just walked into this one, or like me saw it decades later, it would seem fine. However, if you give this film a little bit of historical context, that could maybe change a little bit. So John Hughes was one of the most successful and kind of important movie writers of the 1980s. For many, his works were the defining works of the decade, especially if you're of a certain age. He seemed to know what it actually felt like to be a teenager, and he had some very keen observations on it that still resonate decades later. His films were almost all about adolescence and families. 16 Candles, Weird Science, Pretty in Pink, The Breakfast Club, Some Kind of Wonderful, She's Having a Baby, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. These are all John Hughes penned films. Oh, and Home Alone. So he basically invented the coming-of-age genre. So yeah, he didn't invent it, but he definitely did dominate it for a few years. So anyway, point is, he did Home Alone in 1990, and it was hugely successful. So he was an incredibly hot property after that. And the studios were very anxious to push out anything that he had. Mostly they were anxious to be able to put "from the creator of Home Alone and Ferris Bueller's Day Off" in the ads and the poster, hoping to cash in on his name recognition. So with all that kind of put into perspective, I can see why audiences and critics would be a little bit chilly towards this one. It's just kind of like a mashup of other stuff that he had done previously and better, especially Home Alone. Kid gets locked alone in a store with burglars his first night. He screws around for the whole night, making a mess and destroying property. The kid himself is kind of unlikable, even to his own family, and they see him as kind of a screw-up, and he is kind of a screw-up. So yeah, there's a fair amount in common with Home Alone there. However, out of context, this is just kind of like a charming coming-of-age comedy drama. I will say this, Jim is not likable. I wanted to smack him a lot of the time. And I found myself relating to his parents who want his freeloading butt out of their house.
You pay rent.
I found Josie a bit more likable. She was more complex and sympathetic. She knows that men look at her in a certain way, and she knows how to use her sexuality in order to get stuff she wants. But she also knows that she can't live under her father's kind of abusive hand any longer, and longs to be free from the small town life and experience really anywhere else. Once Jim discovers Josie and they start to talk and discuss their lives, They of course realize that they have more in common than they would have initially thought. The external pressures, the parental figures, and a desire to experience life beyond their hometown. Like nothing huge or revelatory here. It's fairly familiar territory, but still kind of touching and relatable stuff. And Hughes is just such a good writer that you can't help to be kind of drawn in. I found that Hughes is kind of similar to Stephen King in that aspect. Like, even his worst work will still draw you in, and you can't help but watch and or read what's going on. The child in me liked the montage scene where Jim is fooling around in the store for the first couple hours and wrecking stuff up. He's doing all the stuff that you'd want to do as a kid in a department store, but were definitely not allowed to do. The adult in me was like, dear God, get this boy some Adderall. It's kind of obvious to me in hindsight that John Hughes was probably ADHD. And if he wasn't, he certainly identified with that aspect of the characters that he wrote. Like, the lack of attention span is a fairly common theme across his works. And it's on pretty much full display here, as Jim has been at work for like an hour, maybe 2 hours, and he's already losing his mind with boredom and lack of stimulation, I guess. Or maybe Hughes is just like a full extrovert, like pack animal who is just lost when he's on his own. And that's where these characters come in. I don't know, I'm not a psychologist. I'm just kind of throwing that out there. That was kind of my takeaway. I also liked the film a lot more once Josie entered the picture. Like, Connelly is just so naturally charming. Sure, in this, she's like fantasy level attractive in the undershirt and the tight jeans. And the mechanical horse scene was probably countless men and women's sexual awakening. But I think she could have worn a paper bag and been just as successful. Some people are just attractive no matter what they wear. And Connelly seems to be just one of those people. And she seems to yearn for someone to find her internal self to be as attractive as her external self. That was my big revelation about her. Again, not a doctor, just my personal takeaway from the character. So once the crooks enter the picture, the whole dynamic changes again. It goes from a kind of pseudo-therapy session to a survival picture. Both Jim and Josie have to use their strengths to outsmart the crooks, who are played by real-life brothers Kieran and Dermot Mulroney. Josie, of course, uses her sexuality, and Jim uses his charm and his ability to lie.
Too late, they're here. Ned, hold your fire, hold your fire, hold your fire. Ettenhauser's, hold your fire. Tommy and Sporting Goods, hold your fire. Ned, hold your fire. There are infrared scopes trained on your head. We didn't want this, we didn't want this.
With their combined efforts, they come out on top over the dim-witted criminals, who, thinking about it, were also very similar to the wet bandits in Home Alone. They were kind of dumb, and they had the same kind of dynamic. So one thing I will say is this movie never outstays its welcome. It's only 82 minutes long, and it just really flies by. And in spite of its flaws and its similarities to Hughes' other work, I found myself enjoying this one. It's like an overdone and chewy steak, but it is still a steak. I'm going to give this a 3.25 out of 5. Whaley and Connelly's performances were great. The Mulroneys were pretty solid as well for the short time they are with us. And the dialogue is pretty good. It is John Hughes after all. So if you like this, some other John Hughes stuff to check out would be Pretty in Pink, Home Alone, and The Great Outdoors. So what did you guys think of career opportunities? What do you want to see me talk about next? And if you could do me a favor and like and subscribe before you click on out of here. It is quick, free, and relatively painless, and it really helps me out. You know what else actually helps me out? If you share this on the other social media and get other people to watch it. That'd be great. That probably super helps me out. Anyway, thanks for watching me talk about movies for a little bit, and you can tune in next time to see what else Johnny likes.
Hello, boys. Going to Paris on an F-14. Got a little peace meeting with the Vice President of Bulgaria. Business, you know? Then I'm going to Venice for a big spaghetti dinner with the Princess of Austria.